Hello, my name is Susan Foshin, and currently I am one of the nurses at the Mendel Lake Women's Clinic that does the ultrasounds for our patients. I've been involved with the center many years. I was the second director after Ed Young. I did that, I'm thinking, for about 3 or 4 years. I've been on the board, on and off. In terms of being a nurse here, I've been doing that now, I think 12 or 13 years. My family and I, we were at kind of a crossroads. It was time for me to be looking for part-time work. I'd applied for a job and hadn't been called when somebody called me. I think it was Maggie Williamson, who was one of the kind of start people for the center, that called and connected with me, told me about the center, and would I be interested in coming in and being interviewed as the director. I really didn't know very much about the center, but I went in, interviewed, heard more about it. And for me, what happened was, as a public health nurse, when abortion was first passed, I had seen a movie, there'd been teaching and all of that, but it wasn't until I came to the center and had the training of the history and what happened that I really found out about how we got to where we are in terms of abortion, even though Roe v. Wade has been overturned. But that was the first time I'd really looked at it. And then I realized how many people, believers, people that are against abortion, but they don't really know how we got to where we were. Then I became a trainer for people, and in being trained to be a trainer, I found out even more. And that's when my heart just really connected with the center. Group of people from a few different churches that were very interested. Back then we were in the office. It was Dr. Poynton's old office on School Street. It was a small office. We weren't seeing lots and lots of people. Money, of course, for rent and that kind of thing was an issue. I think I started out on a small stipend that grew over the couple, 3-4 years that I served there. I think it was getting the information out to the community of who we are and what we were doing there, and getting support from the churches and people, because it takes money, even if you're small. It takes money for rent and utilities, and even though we didn't have huge paid staff at that point, it was that small beginning and getting the news out, which is a continual issue actually with the center, letting people know who we are and what we're doing. The beginning group of people were amazing, longtime believers whose hearts were really committed to it, and through prayer and reaching out to their churches and people they knew, that was kind of the beginning of kind of overcoming it. I think also at that point, pro-life things, even though it had been several years since the passage of Roe v. Wade, I think the pro-life movement was gaining momentum, and kind of moving past, some of the more interesting things like bombing abortion centers, and maturing. So it was a small beginning. We weren't very long in that office until we moved down the street about 4 blocks to a larger office, and gained more support, which could be seen by the number of, we call them advocates now, they were volunteers back then, and how many different churches they represented. So the news was getting out, and as people worked at the center, volunteered at the center, and then I think as they shared, we began to get more backing from the churches and getting the beginning support that was needed to keep the doors open. I have a couple of stories from early on, and then I was on the board. I have many stories I could tell as a nurse doing ultrasounds. When you see a woman who comes in and there's just no way that she can do this and keep this baby, and she's made up her mind, and we go through our gentle process that we have here, And she may not even change her mind then, but then we call back. She may have even been scheduled for an abortion. I've seen that more than once. And we call back to do our follow-up to find out that she had decided to keep her baby. All of those are amazing. And the other thing that always surprises me is moms that just can't do this and find out they have multiple pregnancies. Well, then all of a sudden they can. It seems like almost like an oxymoron. I can't deal with one, but oh my gosh, it's 2 lives. Then yes, I'll keep them. One of the stories that have stayed with me the years that I worked with the center, we had a very young girl come in. Actually, her parents made her come in, and she was 13. She was very young, and they decided for her that she would have to adopt this child out. That they were not at all for abortion, but that she would need to choose to do that. And so in the process, we followed her on and off. She did give her child up for adoption. However, then she would call us. She would call us every few weeks, totally undone, just weeping. And, it wasn't that she'd given away her baby that she'd carried. After a woman carries a child for 9 months, even though you haven't looked in their face yet, there is that connection. And even at 13, she'd had that connection, and her child was taken away from her. It was not her decision, but her parents just didn't want to deal with that, and I'm not judging them for that. But I don't know what happened later on in her life. I just remember every few weeks we'd get a call and she would be weeping, and we would just listen to her and do our best to comfort her. Well, becoming a medical clinic was absolutely the most wonderful thing to happen. We did pregnancy tests before, and then a volunteer would counsel after training with a woman. And that wasn't scripted. And, volunteers, people are all a little bit different. Some were very evangelistic, some were a little shyer. But when we moved into being a medical clinic, we have so much more to offer in the way that the world accepts here, by offering the pregnancy testing, by offering the STD testing and treatment, by offering ultrasound, because these services aren't out there for free for ladies. And that's a thing we see all the time. They go, "You do this for free?" Yes, all our services here at no cost to you. So that became a real turning point. And it's interesting because I remember, and I don't know how long ago it was, I just remember there was a call because the center was in a place of possibly closing because of financial issues. And actually, Nancy Hansen at that time was one of the key people, I think she was on the board at that time, to go from church to church and get intercessory groups together to pray over several nights. And out of that, the support came, and the doors were kept open enough that now we're a medical clinic. And that puts us at a whole different, we can be shoulder to shoulder with other medical clinics, even though we don't do ongoing OB care. But we have so much more to offer. Word of mouth is still really strong. But now we have advertising, and what's really amazing is we often get calls, people thinking we're Planned Parenthood when we're not, and we have the opportunity to share with people who we are. So to me, becoming a medical clinic was a huge turn in the corner for the center. As a nurse, of course, I want to make a connection with my patients, but I'm there for this limited period of time to do this role. Our volunteers, and now they're advocates, and I think that's a wonderful name for them because that's what they're there for. They make it very clear from the beginning that they're here for this woman and to give her as much information as she wants when she wants it. And their heart is to make that connection. And the people that come here to be advocates are amazing, amazing women. I work with many of them, depending on different days that I work. and their hearts to be given the opportunity to share the gospel with our clients. So they spend a lot of time before the nurse, they spend 15, 20 minutes before they come to the nurses, and then time afterwards, hoping to share the gospel as the Lord allows. And then the follow-up with follow-up appointments and calls back, they are critical. They are the ones, to me, that make an even more personal connect than we as nurses do. We make a good connect, and we do follow up with them, and they come back for return appointments. But the advocates are the ones that lay the foundation, reach out, are the first listeners, let them know that, I'm here for you. So they're critical. They're absolutely critical. I'm very proud that the doors have stayed open, and that we've increased services. And it seems like I'll come in from one week to another and there's a new program being looked at for our ladies. The other thing that's happened behind the scenes, I think more and more churches have become involved as they learn more about it. And we have more open houses, and pastors talk to pastors, or we have pastors breakfasts or brunches to let them know. I feel like, I can't remember the number. I think it might be somewhere 30 or 39 different churches are involved. And to me, in the community, that's a real message for the power of the body of Christ and the love and the concern for the body of Christ. I think I'm very proud to be a part of something that is involving so many believers that come from different backgrounds, but whose hearts have the same pro-life desire.